Earlier this year, the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg made a controversial ruling that compels us to think about the values that should animate the law, and indeed, the very idea of a fair trial. The ruling concerned the radical Islamic preacher Abu Qatada. The British government wanted to deport Qatada to Jordan to face trial for terrorism-related offences. The court held that as there was a real risk that torture evidence would be used against Qatada, his deportation would be in breach of the European Convention. Note, first of all, that the risk was not that Qatada himself would be tortured, but that evidence obtained by torture would be used against Qatada at his trial. Secondly, note that the European Court of Human Rights is an international court that makes rulings on the European Convention of Human Rights. These are binding on national governments because they are signatories to the Convention. The court's ruling was heavily criticised by some. The Daily Mail editorialised as follows: "We may have become wearily accustomed to the crazy verdicts of the unelected Court of Human Rights, which appears to delight in taking sides with rapists, murderers and terrorists against the British public. Is this the right way to think about the Strasbourg Court? It would appear that the European Court of Human Rights is defying the wishes of our elected politicians, setting the ruling of an unelected, unrepresentative court against the will of the people. Surely this is an example of the law being an ass, preventing the deportation and trial of an evil man. We need to approach this question more carefully and more calmly and ask some critical questions." The European Court is in fact standing up for an essential principle: the right to a fair trial. The right to a fair trial is not something politicians can grant or take away from us. It is a human right. And as a human being, Qatada deserves a fair trial. However, it would appear that there are serious allegations against Qatada that link him to terrorist plots. His outspoken views are a matter of public record. But as yet, Qatada has not stood trial in a British court. Moreover, he is entitled to his opinions. He has freedom of speech. He has indeed been detained under anti-terrorism legislation, and this suggests that there is evidence against him. But this evidence has not been tested in open court. From a legal perspective, Qatada is an innocent man. Why then has he not been put on trial in Britain? Journalists have suggested that there is little, if any, evidence that has been obtained lawfully that could be used against him. In other words, a trial in Britain would be inconvenient for the government. But there are other issues, even more pressing than pragmatic politics. The ruling of the European Court of Human Rights clearly states that torture evidence is a fundamental breach of the right to a fair trial. In so doing, the Strasbourg Court cites a British case, quote, "Torture evidence is excluded because it is unreliable, unfair, offensive to ordinary standards of humanity and decency, and incompatible with principles which should animate a tribunal seeking to administer the justice." Whatever you might think of Qatada as an individual, whatever you might think of his views, his case raises some quite important questions about the rule of law. Lawyers have to defend unpopular people. They have to stand up for principles that may be unpopular. Unless evidence can be tested in open court, and unless torture evidence and its use in court is absolutely prohibited, the law lacks integrity. This is why a good lawyer would appreciate that the right to a fair trial is fundamental. We all have the right to a fair trial, to be innocent until proven guilty. This applies to you, to me, and to Abu Qatada.